You have to apologize, I kind of am going to pace around a little bit for this video. But with the new killer releasing to Dead by Daylight within a few weeks, who will be releasing with 3 perks that are outmatched by other perks in the game, I wanted to take the opportunity to discuss certain perks in the game that I feel are completely outmatched by other perks in the game that do their job better. That maybe if you were looking at just trying to develop some new perks or pick up some new perks, like what characters you'd play next, I can give you some advice as to where you should be heading. There's some clear survivor bias that is going to be shown here because I only have 2 killer perks and I have 10 survivor ones. Some are very obvious, but for the purposes of this, we're just going to get right into it. So for the 2 killer ones I want to talk about are 2 perks that I see relatively commonly. Even going up into red rank, I still see these perks for no real apparent reason. So the first one is relatively obvious. This is Franklin's and Overwhelming Presence. So this is for destroying survivor items. I really wanted to avoid touching killer because I think a lot of killer builds rely around niche add-ons in addition to niche builds. So like, for example, you can say that Bloodhound is obviously worse than nurses in terms of tracking injured survivors. However, I disagree on this. I think that Bloodhound fits better on certain killers than nurses necessarily can. You know, a great example of this being with Spirit. Spirit gets more value out of Bloodhound than she would out of nurses. So that's why for the killer side, I have 2. And it's a fairly obvious choice, but nonetheless. First off is the Franklin's and Overwhelming Presence. I see a lot of people running Overwhelming Presence, generally in a high terror radius build, which is where you want to use it. Basically, it makes it so that survivors within your terror radius have doubled item decretion rates, which means they use their item, they lose 2 charges instead of 1. The main issue with this is once survivor knows you have this perk, they're not going to use it. And that's where Franklin's is stronger. Franklin's, every time you use an M1 and you down a survivor, or you hit a survivor, it doesn't matter, they lose their item. And Franklin's is just far superior than Overwhelming. Now, the key here, and most killers know that Franklin's is better than Overwhelming. The key here why I want to mention this is because you keep your item if you leave the game, even if it doesn't have charges. So now Overwhelming Presence has no value, other than getting rid of certain items out of the way early. Franklin's removes it. Franklin's takes it out of your inventory, so you have to go back and pick it back up. Now, the key for me, and why I wanted to make this, is because Franklin's is so superior to Overwhelming Presence in what they do. They're both based around removing survivor items, and yet I see so many people choosing Overwhelming over Franklin's when they have the choice. So, that's number 1. Number 2 is going to be Rancor and Bitter Murmur. Bitter Murmur is a very common perk that I see. Now, part of this is because it is, in and of itself, a common perk for all of the killers. But it's just completely outmatched by Rancor. Basically, Bitter Murmur works where every time a generator is completed, all survivors within 16 meters of the generator have their auras revealed for 5 seconds, and when the last gen is completed, all of the survivors' auras are revealed for 10 seconds, regardless of where they are. This, in theory, is a bad perk, because you do not need to know, necessarily, where the survivors are when they complete a gen. You are much better off running a perk to stop them from completing the gen than you are tracking them after they've completed the gen. Generally, as a killer, you know if a generator just went off, you will know, okay, the survivors are over there. Because the generator goes ding and lets you know. You don't need a perk for that. The only real value to Bitter Murmur is when the last generator is repaired, you can see all survivors' auras for 10 seconds. That in and of itself is not particularly great, because that makes it an endgame perk. And for an endgame perk, you are much better off having no ed, or Blood Warden than you are this perk. We also have Rancor. This is the perk that completely outmatches Bitter Murmur. Here's why. So the way Rancor works is every time a generator is completed, your obsession will see your aura for 3 seconds. Which, that's pretty much meaningless. It just lets the survivor know you have Rancor. Although if they're running like Alert or Dying Light, they may not know that. So, it's a little mind game there. The other thing too, each time a generator is completed, all survivors' locations are revealed to you for 3 seconds. Now the key to this is, yes, it's less time than Bitter Murmur, but it's also all survivors. All 4. Regardless of where they are, you will see a little notification of where they are. So there is no real value to running Bitter Murmur compared to Rancor. And in terms of endgame benefit, Rancor is also better because it allows you to insta-down and Mori your obsession versus an aura reveal on all survivors for the last 10 seconds of... Okay, yeah. So Rancor gives you much better tracking throughout the game than Bitter Murmur does. And I see a lot of people running Bitter Murmur. If you have your choice between the two, you should always choose Rancor over Bitter Murmur. It's not as strong tracking, but it is much more consistent and reliable tracking. So now we move to the Survivor side of things. And for Survivor, I wanted to... There's going to be some fairly obvious ones in here, but I wanted to specifically talk about certain perks that I see being run that are not necessarily the greatest things in the world. So obviously, the first thing that's going to pop up is Detective's Hunch. And this perk is clearly better than... Where can I find them at? I don't even run them. I don't know where they spawn now. Don't tell me that's a purple. No, that's not. Oh my god, you're gonna tell me that's a purple perk? I would have never realized that. Okay. Yeah. Wow, that's a purple perk. Okay. Basically, so we have Detective's Hunch, which is superior to both Small Game and Deja Vu. Now, I'm putting these two together because Detective's Hunch does the job of both of these perks. It is at the very least better than Deja Vu. Deja Vu, whenever you spawn into the game, the 3 generators, which are close to you, will be revealed to you for 60 seconds. And every time a generator pops, you will see another generator. Every time. This is compared to Detective's Hunch, which every time you complete a generator, all generators, chests, and totems within 64 meters of you are revealed. Well, 3 things getting revealed is better than 1 thing getting revealed. Also, we have Small Game, which is whenever you are looking in the direction of a killer trap or totem in a small cone, it will go ding and let you know you're looking at it. Now this perk has a little bit more value because this works better against hags and trappers. This used to work against the Doctor, which made it pretty decent, but they patched that out a long time ago. The main issue for me with Small Game is comparing this to Detective's Hunch, which shows you exactly where the totem is. So this is another example of potentially one perk being better than another. The next perk to talk about is... Oh, where's that at? Is that at? Don't tell me I'm being a tater and I'm blind. Boom. And boom. Small Game, or Spine Chill, over Premonition. Now, Spine Chill is a perk where when the killer is looking in your direction, and they're within a certain range of you, the perk will light up, you'll get a small repair speed bonus, pretty much a bonus to everything, and you'll get increased skill check odds and smaller skill check zones. Versus Premonition, which will go ding whenever the killer is within a certain range and looking at you. So, you have a perk that gives you a bonus in speed to everything, or you have a perk that goes ding and goes on cooldown for 30 seconds. I wonder which of these perks I am going to choose. Oh joy. This is another fairly obvious one. The next one that we will be discussing. This is no-brainer, but I'm throwing it in here for honesty's sake. So we have Distortion versus Soul Survivor. Distortion makes it so that anytime your aura would be revealed to the killer, it consumes a token instead, and for the next 10 seconds, whenever a token is consumed, you will not leave scratch marks, and your aura will not be shown. That's a very important part that people forget about Distortion, is that it also applies to your scratch marks. Most people do not realize this. I've seen people running Distortion and Dance with me, and I kind of like laughing at those people, because it's like, yeah, no, you don't need that. Soul Survivor requires your fellow teammates to be killed in order for the perk to activate, and it makes it so that your aura cannot be revealed within a certain range to the killer. The downside is, realistically, this perk is only going to work against nurses, Scratch Mirror Myers, doctors with the aura reveal on add-on, Freddy's with the add-on. Like, most of it is killer powers, nurses, and I'm all ears. And you still have to have teammates die. If they wanted to buff Soul Survivor, they could infinitely make it better by just simply saying, you know, you have a certain range around you where no auras can be seen. I would like that instead, if they changed it to like a radius around you where no one can see auras, even survivors and stuff like that. Create like a little dead zone. That would be an interesting twist for the perk, but, you know, what do I know? Balance is, you know, not in their strong spot. Next up, we have Fixated versus Lightweight. Lightweight is a perk I commonly see, usually in yellow to green ranks. It usually dies out by the time you hit purple, but I have seen many red ranks running it. Basically, Lightweight makes it so that your scratch marks stay visible for less time, whereas Fixated makes it so that you can see your own scratch marks and you walk faster. So why Fixated becomes stronger is it's better to have the information that Fixated gives you, and the walking speed bonus, than just simply, oh, your scratch marks go away. Putting the two perks together is a bit overkill as well. Like, you can do that if you want to get Lightweight to work, but there's no point when you're comparing it to Fixated, which simply lets you see your scratch marks. It gives you information as to what the killer is seeing. We also have, I think it's a purple one, isn't it? Yes, it is. So, the next one we have is Aftercare versus Empathy. Empathy is a very common perk, even up into the red ranks. It is a Claudette perk, and it makes it so that all injured and dying survivor auras are revealed to you within 128 meter range. This is critical because that's essentially almost an entire map. The downside to this is that it affects injured and dying allies. So, if a survivor is healthy, they are not revealed by this. Aftercare outmatches this because it enables you to see the entire rest of your team's auras by either unhooking or healing them, or being unhooked or healed by them. While this does require a bit more work than Empathy does, the advantage to this is it gives you a constant sense of information as to what the entire team is doing, as opposed to one or two individuals in a very select situation. Empathy also deactivates if you walk over and heal the person that is injured. You lose that perk. Whereas Aftercare, you lose it when you get hooked. If the survivor that you've unhooked gets hooked again, you still get to see their aura. It's only when you get hooked that you lose that benefit. So it's stronger in regards to its versatility compared to Empathy. The next one is an absolute no-brainer. It's simply here for the shits and giggles of it, and that is Borrowed Time versus Babysitter. Basically, Borrowed Time is like one of the quintessential crutch perks of the game, especially on the survivor side, allowing you to make unsafe hook rescues and enabling you to combat tunneling or camping killers. Babysitter is a perk that lets the survivor run away with no blood and scratch marks after being unhooked, and shows the killer that you are the person that's making the unhook. This is a very bad thing to run if you have a killer that is running Make Your Choice. So the killer knows exactly what survivor they need to now go and insta-down. I wonder which of these two perks I would like to run. The next one is actually kind of a twofer. Is it a It is. It is a purple one. Damn. I feel bad for that perk now. That's kind of sad. What's the other one that's better than it? Distortion. Okay. So, this is two perks that actually outmatch one perk. So, this is a relatively recent perk that just came out off the record. Whenever you are unhooked or escape from the hook, it activates for 80 seconds. While this perk is active, your aura cannot be shown to the killer, and you do not make noise while injured. This, in theory, is great. However, it is a completely wasted anti-tunnel perk. Decisive is better. Dead Hard is better. Anything else besides this is better. And I selected Iron Will and Distortion because these are the two perks that will last you all game. Compared to this for 80 seconds. And because you could only get off a hook up to 2 times per game, if you're lucky, then that means that's 160 seconds of total gameplay that this perk will give you value, versus Iron Will, which is as long as you're injured. Even Distortion is better, even though it's only 30 seconds, because Distortion will also give you information as to, oh, my aura is being revealed. Gee, I wonder what they're running, as opposed to a perk that just does not give you, the user, any feedback. Where's Kindred at? The next perk, this is another 2 for selection, that is 2 that are better than 1, is, again, it's a bit of a no-brainer, but a lot of Nancy mains have gotten into arguments with me over this, trying to swear up and down about how good this perk is, so let's put this to bed once and for all. So, Kindred and Bond versus Better Together. Better Together is a perk where the aura of any generator you are working on is revealed to all other survivors within 32 meters. Let's first start with the fact that this perk is completely outmatched by Prove Thyself, which, when a survivor gets on a gen with you, lets you get it done faster. This perk is also completely countered by the killer perk Discordance, which is a glowing notification to the killer to come chase both of you off of it. So there's problem number 1. I've selected Bond because Bond is better than Better Together. No pun intended. Better Together has a range of 32 meters. Bond has a range of 36 meters. So, again, I ask, why would you run the Better Together? Well, but wait, there's more. Like a bad late-night infomercial, we have Better Together's second effect. When the killer downs a survivor while you are repairing a generator, that is a very, very large caveat, you will see the aura of all other survivors for 10 seconds. To which I would, again, recommend you to Bond, which lets you see any nearby allies, so you'll be able to know if they go down close to you, or if there's anybody near you. And then there's Kindred, which gives you an unlimited range of all other survivors while someone is on a hook, which is what happens after a survivor goes down, generally. And it lets you see the killer, which Better Together does not do. So again, to all the Nancy mains out there that think that Better Together is somehow better, it is not. But then again, Nancy mains also think all of their perks are really good when they have one good perk. But that's okay. The next one would be Alert versus Dark Sense. Now, I'm not saying that Dark Sense is a bad perk. I do enjoy running it. But just for comparison's sake, I'm throwing Alert in here because it's simply more useful than Dark Sense. Alert lets you see the killer's aura whenever they perform a break action, which is a pallet or a generator. With enough mental practice, you will know what parts of the map are unsafe that don't have pallets because you've seen the killer breaking them, and it will also let you know what generators have been popped with either overcharge or pop, etc. Whereas Dark Sense activates up to 5 times per game, whereas Alert can go off much more. They're both good perks, but it's a simple matter of Alert will come in more often than Dark Sense will. And lastly, the last one that I wanted to cover. This is the big one. Adrenaline versus all of the other endgame perks. All of the other endgame perks. Because, for whatever reason, there seems to be a lot of these. So that would be Adrenaline versus Hope, Wake Up, and No One Left Behind. Realistically, as a survivor, you do not have more than one spot you can take up for an endgame perk. So, the fact that there are 4 endgame perks that do completely different and random things is a bit odd. In order, I would say that... I have this order a little bit messed up. I would say that the worst of the group is Wake Up. So, whenever the exit gates are powered, you will see them within 128 meters. Again, this is almost the entire map, usually. While opening a gate, all other survivors will see your aura within 128 meters, and you will open the exit gate faster. The only real benefit you would want to run for this is on indoor maps, where you're not sure where the gates are, or if you want the gate opening bonus. Leader is actually better than this. If you run it and have somebody else open the door, they'll open it 25% faster instead of 15. Spine Chill and Resilience both affect doors and are more useful during the game. Wake Up has no value compared to the other 3. The second worst one would be No One Left Behind. So, the value of No One Left Behind is it's a bit of a blood point farm, in addition to all other survivors' auras are revealed to you. The difference here is that unlike the other 2, which activate only when the gates are powered, for this one, a gate has to be opened. Which, that in and of itself, limits the usefulness of the perk even further. At most, you have 2 minutes that you can use this perk. At most, because of this wonderful thing called the endgame collapse. In addition, the way the blood points stack also don't work particularly well. It grants 100% additional blood points for healing and unhooking other survivors, but if you've already maxed out healing and unhooking other survivors, you do not get the bonus blood points on it. It also gives a 50% action speed bonus when healing and unhooking other survivors. That would be the main reason that you run it, so that if you need to go back and get another survivor. However, the main issue is you are much better off running, say, Botany Knowledge, which is 33% healing and works all game. There's not a lot you can really do for unhooking, but yeah. Hope would probably be the best of these 3, but it is still outmatched by Adrenaline. Hope makes it so that you move fast 7% faster for 2 minutes once the gates are powered. This is faster walking speed, faster running speed, faster crouch walking speed. The main downside to this perk is most of the time you're not getting value out of this unless you have a 110 or slower movement speed killer. Or you just have a potato that is not expecting a longer loop. Basically, this can act as a poor man's dead hard against killers that like to swing a lot. Usually the higher up you go, the less effective this gets. And all 3 of these perks are completely outmatched by Adrenaline, which will instantly heal you 1 health state, if applicable, and grant you a 5-second sprint burst of 150%, instead of the normal 3-second sprint burst that you get off of sprint burst, lift, or balanced landing. It also wakes you up if you're against a Freddy. It also overrides any exhaustion that you already have from aforementioned sprint burst, balanced, lift, but also dead hard and head on. This perk is just so solid because not only is it the longest sprint burst in the game in terms of duration, it is also the most reliable end game heal that you get. The only issue with it is completely countered by no-ed, which sucks if you are running dead hard with this. Other than that, that has been the outmatched perks of Dead by Daylight. Considering the new killer will be releasing with 3 perks that are completely outmatched by perks already in the game. I hope you've enjoyed this little walk down memory lane.